This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
7:49 in the morning, you're listening to The Morning Run with Shazana, Shou, Ning and Philip. The Sarawak State Legislative Assembly has been dissolved effective November the 3rd, making way for a state election. The Election Commission will now convene a meeting to determine when the state elections should be held within the next 60 days. Most political analysts are predicting mid to end December elections. But the question I suppose that everyone's asking is Sarawak really ready for state elections with the pandemic still ongoing? And what are the critical election issues that we should pay attention to? So for some thoughts on this, we have on the line Dr. James Chin, Professor of Asian Studies at the University of Tasmania and a frequent commentator on East Malaysian politics. Good morning, James. Thanks so much for speaking with us today. Now, the last time we spoke to you, they hadn't yet dissolved the State Assembly, but now it's official. They have, and elections must be held by January the 2nd, although to date, we don't have a specific date yet. What do you think will be the main campaign issues at stake?
Good morning. So thank you for inviting me. So in terms of the key election issues, I think for the opposition, one of the key issues that they will be bringing up is the fact that this was a forced election. As many of your listeners know, Sarawak was under a special emergency, and that was supposed to expire on the 1st of February. So we're talking about a period of 3 months. So the argument is that why can't GPS wait for 3 months, 3 more months, and hold the elections after Chinese New Year? Why are they rushing the elections? And the short answer for most people in Sarawak is because GPS is very afraid of those 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds who will be getting the vote next year. So they want it to be held as quickly as possible in order to avoid the young people. So this will be a key campaign issues. In terms of the other issues, the usual issues will apply, the land issue, the NCR issues that will affect mainly the Dayak community, the issue about Abanjo's leadership, the issues about corruption and mismanagement by GPS, another big issue. And of course, the big issue that's been there for the last 10 years, and that is about MA63. So these are some of the key issues. And of course, at the local area, depends on who the candidates are, there'll be some local issues as well. But I have no doubt in my mind that the election date will be a key issue among all the opposition parties.
So, James, building on this point, why do you think GPS is so worried about Undi 18 coming into force? I mean, will their vote really change the outcome of the elections?
Well, it depends on who you speak to. So it is widely understood that, more than 100,000 new voters will come online if you allow the young people to vote. And there seems to be a general consensus on the government side that these young people are mostly anti-establishment. They're more likely to vote against the government than for GPS. But my take is very different. My take is that this is not necessarily true in Sarawak. There's no empirical evidence that suggests that young people are all against GPS. In fact, as far as I know, GPS has invested in a lot of fake NGOs and CSOs in Sarawak that are reaching out to the young people. And GPS has been very successful in promoting this idea, Sarawak for Sarawakians, or Sarawak nationalism, in order to shout out Pakatan Harapan. So they've been doing a lot of groundwork in the last 3 years among the young people. So I'm not sure why they're afraid of young people. And my other argument is that a lot of these young people are actually registered in the urban areas. As your listeners know, a lot of these urban areas in Sarawak are already in the hands of the opposition. So even if they were to support the opposition, they'll just merely increase the majority of the opposition candidates rather than harming GPS.
But, if you look at the 2016 state election, when it was led by Adnan Satem, they did very well. I mean, they did 72 out of the 82 seats. So really, it is for them. It's for the DAP and the Pakatan Harapan team to gain more seats, right? So what are you going to look at in terms of seats to see whether the swing happens or not?
Well, I think it's quite clear that that election result is sort of one in a very blue moon. I don't think it is possible for GPS to repeat that sort of 72 out of 82. But having said that, one of the big problems with the opposition now is that they're highly, highly divided. So everybody tells me that the opposition party with the most traction on the ground is a party called PSB. They are not playing ball with Pakatan Harapan. Basically, the argument of Pakatan Harapan is that they are a local-based party and they want to contest is more than half the seats, more than 40 seats in Sarawak. And of course, Pakatan Harapan with DAP, a strong party, Pakatan Harapan refuses to let them contest in more than 40 seats. On top of that, you have a very small vocal party called PBK, Parti Bumi Kingalang, which is very interesting because it is the only party in the whole of the Malaysian system that openly advocates for Sarawak to leave the federation if they come into power. So obviously, they'll be going after 40 seats as well. And a lot of these parties, the Sarawak-based party, refuse to deal with DAP, PKR, because they deem this party as Malayan parties. So they're not going to deal with them. Now, whether they can come to some sort of a deal for one-to-one fight against the GPS, I doubt that very much because time is running out. So because of that, to me, right, GPS is really, really silly to pull the trigger on this election. It just makes them look bad and it makes them look like they're scared.
Okay, so you think that GPS is essentially shooting itself in the foot by rushing through the elections. They could actually have kind of bided their time before calling for elections.
Yes, I mean, my point is that, the holding elections in December, holding elections in February, right? What's the difference? The difference is only about 30 days. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I would argue holding the elections after Chinese New Year is a lot better because everybody's a lot happier after getting their angpaos.
But James, at the end of the day, that's not really going to change the outcome of the Sarawak elections, is it? Is it going to be a foregone conclusion that GPS will win?
Unfortunately, yes. GPS will win. And the question is really, what is the majority? So as I mentioned earlier, my two prediction is constant. GPS is going to win, but they're not going to win 72-82. It'll be less than that.
And I want to build on this point about Parti Sarawak Bersatu because their presidential council member, Barubian, he said he has reached out to DAP chief for the two parties to do their best in cooperating with each other. He says he wants to avoid three or multiple corner fights. But then you just said that DAP doesn't want to work with them. So how do you think is a solution possible?
A solution is possible, but it will require compromises on both sides. So as I mentioned earlier, it's very difficult for PSB to negotiate with DAP because some of the seats that PSB wants are in Chinese majority seats. They're actually currently held by DAP. DAP's argument is that we're willing to negotiate, but we're not willing to negotiate seats where we are the incumbent. So as you know, most of the Chinese majority seats in Sarawak are already under the DAP. So it's very difficult. Secondly, PSB clearly needs to contest more than 40 seats because you can't go to an election telling the people that, we're going to form the next government if you compete in less than 40 seats where you can't form the government. So these are the two big hurdles they have to, come to some sort of solution. My take is that they don't have a lot of time to negotiate. And unfortunately, you'll find that many seats, there'll be 3 or 4 or even 5 corner seats. The thing about Sarawak is that one of the big problems in Sarawak is that you get lots of fake independents. Mm-hmm. And when I say fake independents, I mean independents who are put up by a major political party in order to kacau the seat, in order to get back the seat. So this will most likely happen to seats held by PRS, Parti Rakyat Sarawak. As you know, right, the party president just passed away recently. So many people think that the party is weakened. And because of that, some of the other major parties may decide unofficially to support independent candidates in PRS seats in order to get it back.
And very quickly, James, why is DAP saying that they're going to field half of new faces in these elections? What's the strategy here?
It's not really a strategy. I mean, DAP actually have lots of talent. So it's a question of giving the young people a chance. And also, 2 of their senior DAP people have actually left the party. So, for example, Panungan has resigned from the party. Another senior person has quietly left the party. So it's a question of putting new faces. But a lot of these new faces thing, I've always argued that it's not really new faces. People know who these people are. They've been on the ground for many, many years. New faces simply means that they have not stood at the election before. So, for example, DAP most probably will field a guy called Julian Tan, who used to be an MP as well. He stepped down, so he's coming back probably as Adun. So there's no really such thing as a new face. A new face would mean that this guy is totally unknown. But DAP, hardly ever does that. A lot of people they select as candidates are people who's already been working on the ground for quite some time. Don't forget, all the political parties in Sarawak has been more or less campaigning for last 2 years because everybody knew that this election was coming.
All right, James, thanks very much for speaking with us today. No doubt we'll have many more conversations with you as the Sarawak elections unfold. That was Dr. James Chin, Professor of Asian Studies at the University of Tasmania, talking to us about what to expect for the Sarawak elections. It is 7:59 in the morning. We're heading into the 8 a.m. news bulletin. Stay tuned, BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.